All right.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, hopefully everyone can hear. We've been futzing with our audio. Hey, so I'm Toby,
And I'm Ryan.
and this is another episode of the Cuttle live stream. And on the agenda today, we are going to show a few projects from the community, and then we're going to show the latest template, which is a name snowflake, where you can type your name and it changes this sort of symmetric design. And then we thought it would be interesting to do like Toby and Ryan's backstory and just sort of talk about where we came from and like how that led us into making Cuttle. And we actually had to prep this because we're going to be tomorrow. Ryan and I are going to be going to a high school to see their final projects that were made with Cuttle, which is super exciting for us because we haven't done any field trips yet. We've seen a lot that teachers are using Cuttle in the classroom, but it'll be really cool to actually be in there.
Yeah, it'll be cool to do that in person. I think we kind of started Cuttle during, basically, as soon as we had a prototype, then it was sort of pandemic,
Right,
pandemic hits,
yeah.
and then we were kind of we didn't really interact with anyone except for over the internet. So yeah, it'll be cool to visit a school that's actually using Cuttle.
Yeah, when we started this, we thought that we would make the prototype and then we would do a series of live workshops because I don't know, I like doing like art workshops with, 10 to 20 people. But yeah, like pretty much within a week of us actually starting work on Cuttle, that was when the pandemic hit and we had to reconfigure our expectations as everyone did. And so after that presentation, we were thinking we could just do a Q&A. So if anyone has any questions now, later would be a great time to ask, any whether it's a technical question or anything about Cuttle or whatever, we would do the Q&A. All right, so a couple projects from the community this week. This was a teacher who has 8th grade students and shared some nice laser cut projects. Is this? This looks to me like a vinyl cutout getting ready to be transferred. I thought this one was sort of neat. It looks to me like several circles that have been repeated around, but then it's sort of interesting, all the different things that are cut versus etched and like these little pieces here.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that.
Yeah, it seems like there's it's almost like they traced, they did they did a Boolean and they kind of went in and sort of tweaked it afterward to make it a little bit less regular.
But it still is symmetric.
It's still symmetric, but the line, the
yeah,
sort of,
these aren't quite circles. There's interesting curves happening. And a little ornament. There are a bunch of cool projects in the show and tell of the Discord this week. So the first one this week was this Christmas ornament of an angel, and JerseyMike, who is also known as Eric Steele.
Maybe we should put ourselves on the right hand side so that people can see the images.
Okay. I liked that he shared his whole process for making this. He was saying that he started with a reference image, I guess probably from Google Images or something, and then traced on top of it using the pen tool, and then made this, and then added text and used he told me that he used the warp modifier to get
Cool.
this, and this. And then also parameterize the name so he could change the name to quickly make all of the ornaments that he was planning to for this holiday season. And I liked that. I think he mentioned like this would normally take him an entire weekend, and it instead took about 3 hours.
That's really cool. So for anybody who doesn't know the warp, I think maybe he's referring to warp coordinates. So we have kind of an experimental modifier in there. Or I guess it's maybe not experimental at this point, but it's kind of one of the weirder ones, where you can take any shape and you can warp it, but you kind of need to write
this one, right?
Like a math expression to do it. Yeah.
Warped. Okay.
So we put in some examples there, but I haven't seen too many people using it because it's a little bit esoteric.
I see. So this is warping the left and right, so I can set that to 0.
Yeah.
And then I can set this one
You'd have
for
to
the up and down.
Maybe increase the wavelength on that one, like to like maybe 10 or something. Like you have to go up.
It's this one.
Yeah.
So if you make that bigger, then you can. Another way that you could go about this, which is a little bit maybe easier, is you can make a curve, say like that, and then text along path, and then you can do that. If you do scale to fit, it'll fit along there, and now you have this, and you can just set it up exactly.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I would have expected someone to use. It's like the one that we built for that feature, like to be able to do not necessarily warped text, but text along a path.
Right. So this one can do like really funky things. Like if you had made these numbers smaller, you can sort of go crazy.
Or like I guess the like the example of how far you can take that is I don't know if we want to go into this, but but there's like a project that I had shared a while ago that was so this is like basically taking it and doing like a lens warp on it, and but I've been messing around with this like a while ago, trying to make it easier to use, so we have a kind of work in progress sort of.
Oh, are you talking about the box warp? Oh yeah, let's show that next time. I don't have it pulled up, but yeah.
We can show that.
The other cool thing about this is that this was an experimental thing that is still in there, but this method is actually used by this implementation or something like that, right? I mean, isn't it?
No. So the warping is specifically so text along path takes each character and it transforms the character by rotating.
I
scaling,
see. It doesn't. Positioning. So each letter is not distorted.
Yeah.
It's just put in a different place.
Yeah. So we keep the letter forms.
I see.
So that's one reason why you might want to use a warp instead of a text along path would be, for example, if you have like a script font or something. So a script font, it has like letters that connect to each other. So you might, if your text was really warped, you might lose that connection or with text along path. But if you use warp, then basically like everything will still be connected. We don't have built-in support for that yet. But if you go digging around in my shared projects, you can find some examples of warping along path.
All right, I think we got off track.
Yeah.
So, cool project, and I'm really glad that Cuttle was able to save you time. I think we made it so it would both save you time and also give you more time to make more projects or like do more iterations. It's like anytime that, it's not just like that you're saving time, but it's like now you can do more because you have more time. That's what I like about Cuttle.
Yeah, or just try out more
Exactly,
variations.
try out more things. Yeah. These cool little ornaments were shared. This, I guess, for a ugly sweater competition. Very cute. You've got the holes for hanging. I wonder if this was made in Cuttle with the.
Oh yeah.
Or if that's an emoji. I don't know. Is that the snowflake emoji?
I think the snowflake emoji is slightly different.
I see.
So that could be
snowflake emoji. A little bit different.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah. I bet it was just made custom. That star. And then...
Cute.
Yeah. Very nice. And then this was the last ornament that was shared, these gingerbread people. And then this one had a bite. Yeah.
Cute. Yeah, lots of people making ornaments, it looks like. Which is, I guess that's the season.
Now's the time to do it. This was a cute phone stand project shared by bwente, and it's totally parametric. So, if your phone was wider than the phone that he made it for, you can change that, or the height of it, or this gap.
Okay, like how big you want the feet to be.
Yeah, and then if you need to stick a wire under there, it's made for that. And then Brian also sort of parameterized all the different parts of it, so that's changing the slots here, and then also the tabs that go in. And apparently it's made to be a little bit loose so that you can take it apart for traveling. And
also it kind of looks like it's maybe it's meant to if it wasn't a little bit, or like the sort of action of it, of the I don't know what you call that, sort of like you have the top piece and you have the bottom piece, and the action of the top piece sort of resting against the bottom piece kind of keeps it in place
here.
Yeah, like the more weight there is, so you don't necessarily need to get like a super tight fit. Right,
yeah. No, it looks like it'll stay in place until you take it apart. And you can customize the engraving that's on it.
Brian Wente says, that's right, Ryan. So
you were right.
Right.
Yeah, I like that you can choose your artwork also. Great. Good job, community. We released this new template yesterday, something like that. And it looks like this. So the idea is that you type in your name, and then your name gets mirrored and rotated around 6 times. So it makes a snowflake out of your name, and by changing like the font and the positioning, you can get all sorts of designs with it. And of course it has a hole for hanging. And then this one, I made it so that you could uncheck the mirror option, so you could turn off the mirroring if you didn't want it to be mirrored, which I don't know if that's certainly not a classic snowflake. It looks sort of like a snowflake. I don't know exactly what a snowflake's symmetries are in physics. Is
Yeah,
that
I don't really know. I mean, they seem to be pretty symmetric, but I think it's I don't know what causes that, but also if you look at like images of snowflakes, they also tend to be pretty random. Like they're not always like the perfect
I see.
symmetric snowflake
Uh-huh.
like you see in like the emoji of it.
Uh-huh.
It's like I don't know if you well yeah I don't know if we want but yeah like it basically like real snowflakes have like one arm will be like slightly bigger than the other arm and
Guess that makes
um,
sense. Yeah, I mean, like crystals in general are sort of like that. Like they have
mhm.
the symmetry, but yeah, they also are just
Yeah.
subject to whatever happens to them, and then they sort of evolve
Yeah,
from there.
I think it's like basically like like I don't know this for sure, but like it seems like a sort of like a diffusion limited aggregation kind of thing where basically like that so diffusion limited aggregation is basically like a way of modeling that kind of growth where you basically you have like you have some kernel of where so like maybe I can demo it on here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have so you have some kernel that starts like in the in the middle, and then basically like snow is kind of like is and ice is just swirling around the environment, and it sort of starts to stick on the center kernel,
Mm-hmm.
and then as it grows out, like the ice that already exists kind of prevents new ice from sticking to the inner parts of it, so it kind of like only sticks to the outer parts.
Mm-hmm.
And because like I guess ice is a crystal, it wants to connect to itself in certain ways. So like it
Hmm.
wants to connect at certain angles, and
Hmm.
that means that I guess like you get these kind of like shapes that look like like it's less likely that a maybe on here it's better to demo it. So it's less likely that a piece of ice will stick to this area than it is that it will stick to to this area, because if you think of all the directions that the ice could come in, it's going to be blocked by these things like from
So
like
it
many
wants to
different
stick on the
directions.
outside,
Yeah.
but then also something about the way that the physics of the ice, it wants to sort of form at certain angles, and that's why it makes these
Yeah.
like pretty shapes and not just a
Not just
random ball or something.
yeah. You look at something that like is the same process with with something that's not a crystal, and it sort of looks much more random. So
Oh, I see.
um, yeah, I'm guessing maybe that has something to do with that.
Cool. So this is the Cuttle template that I made a few days ago, and the idea is that yeah, you can type in your own name, and so I typed in Ryan, and then it goes here, and that gets mirrored and repeated around, and then you can also change the initial position of the name. Oops. And then you get these different designs. And then also just changing the font gives you lots of different looking designs. And then there's that mirror option, so you can turn off mirroring.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. I see you're using remove holes.
Yes. Change the amount of outline around it. And I set it up so that like no matter how long the name is, it will be about 4 inches. Like if you look at the ruler's not changing even when I'm, changing anything like this or making like long name after Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing is staying sort of within this like 2-inch diameter.
Right. That makes sense, because if you're making a bunch of these for different people, you probably want them to be around the
All
same
about
size.
the same size, about like a coaster size, which is about 4-inch diameter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. It seems like people have been really into this. I posted it on the Glowforge forum, and it seems like people are into it and making some of these. Yeah, and then these were like we showed, cut, engraved onto acrylic, and then the outline is cut. One tip when engraving on acrylic: use the cast acrylic. It actually works a lot better. I have a bunch of scrap acrylic that I use for my laser cutter, and like I have a bunch of extruded acrylic, and it really just doesn't work as well.
Didn't even know there were multiple types of acrylic.
Yeah. It, like, either of them, if you're just cutting, it doesn't really matter, but like the etching, it's a lot cleaner on the cast acrylic, I found when I was making these demo ones. All right, well, that is the new template. And so now I guess we're going to do this little presentation about our backstory and how we got into what we're doing now, like how we got here. So this is a project that I did when I was in grad school, which I went to an art school for grad school. And so my background is in math and computer science, and I was always really into computers and programming and stuff like that. But I was also into just art, like making fun things, and sort of, I get around 2008, 2010 or something, when like I had some downtime and decided, I should go to grad school for this 2-year art program that a roommate of mine had been going to, and I thought it was really cool there. And it gave me a chance to just pursue my art practice, and I made a lot of things out of mirrored acrylic. I got really into kaleidoscopes, sculptures of all kinds. This is the first time I had ever used a laser cutter. And so this is a kaleidoscope where two people can look in on either end and see each other's eyes. And there's like LEDs sort of embedded into the edge, which lights up your eyes. And that's why there's like these, you can see those reflections on her eye. And then at this school, like, it's sort of like a tech meets art school. It's called ITP, Interactive Telecommunications Program. It's at NYU. And everyone there is coming, maybe from a tech background or maybe from more of an art background. Like, there are a lot of like dancers and photographers, theater people, all sorts of backgrounds, which is why it's such a fun program. But by the end, everyone is learning programming, because that's one of the tools that people want to be able to use, and sort of why they go to a program like this. So I already knew programming, but then there are all these people who were learning programming for the first time. And in like working with them, I realized that programming like is very, it sort of works well with a particular way of thinking, but there are other ways of thinking that are just as interesting that just don't mesh with programming. And I thought, like, why is that? Like, why can't we make programming tools that mesh well with dancing or visual arts? Like, if that's like the way that you're thinking about what you're doing, like, why can't there be our tools, sort of like work with that? And so this was one of the prototypes I made sort of in response to that. So this is an early prototype called recursive drawing, where you drag out shapes from the left. So it's a lot like Cuttle. So I've made this heart out of some circles and squares and drag them out from the left. But then the cool thing is that you can drag a shape into itself. So I've just dragged a shape with a heart and then another copy of itself into there. And that's why it's called recursive drawing, because they're these recursive shapes. And so here, for example, I'm going to make a rectangle. And now I'm going to drag another copy of the rectangle onto the canvas, and then another copy of the rectangle. So then each one makes two more, and then you end up with this tree shape.
You still need that feature in Cuttle.
Yeah, we don't have recursion. We should. We've talked about it. This was another. I later made this sort of continuation. This is called Apparatus, and this was a drawing tool for interactive diagrams. And the idea is that like we should have more of these interactive diagrams for explaining concepts or just making fun things like this. And so this was a tool that it's like a graphics vector editor, but you can program in different sort of behaviors, a lot like how Cuttle works. So here I'm making a color picker, so each slider is changing the RGB, and then I'm wiring up the color picker to like each one of the guys, and this is showing spreads, which is sort of like linear repeat and sort of like our customized repeats to make a graph. So this was a research prototype that was done. I was working in an academic research lab, and it's online. You can go to the website, and yeah, I mean it was a great prototype. It's like a little janky, so it not really production ready. But Cuttle is like sort of taking the ideas from recursive drawing and Apparatus and like actually trying to make something that's like usable by a lot of people, which is quite a challenge, but that's what we're doing. At this research lab, we were also really interested in like how do we have computers without the screens. So we were doing a lot of things with, this is like, you can see there's code written on these pages, and the code gets run automatically, and there's projectors and cameras in the ceiling that are tracking these pieces of paper, and the pieces of paper have these colored dots that sort of identifies them to the system and where they are in space. So they can point at each other. So here I'm like pointing this code at another page or piece of foam core, and then you can point it at other pieces, and then the code runs wherever the code is seen, wherever it's pointing and stuff like that. And just to show another fun one from this era, I was really into these like interactive books, and so this is a book about symmetry, about they're called wallpaper groups in math, and the idea is that you can sort of draw these sort of seed shapes, I guess, and then they would be replicated in the book, and then once you had that, you can tell I like kaleidoscopes. Then there were sort of these each page represented a different symmetry group, and then you could play around with different symmetries, and it's also a coloring book. Like the idea was that it was like a coloring book that's also a math book that's also an interactive book.
I love these ones from this project that use the that take like an image or like an illustration from the environment and kind of like project it back, and
that use the camera feed and then like do something with it. Yeah. I mean, this whole system was basically implemented with cameras and projectors in the ceiling. This was a very early prototype, but you can see like I was doing a lot of laser cutting for a lot of these experiments, because we wanted to try out different cameras. Like this is, I think, a normal camera, but then this is an IR camera, it's filtered so it only sees IR light, and then these are some IR LEDs, and there's some Raspberry Pis, and we want to mount them all and quickly put them on the ceiling. This is very much not what it looks like. It looked like later, but this was an early one that we did, and so I ended up doing a lot of laser cutting when I was working at that lab, and I was using apparatus for the laser cutting, and that's sort of where I figured out, oh, it would be great if there was something like apparatus, that interactive diagram maker that I showed, but that could that was actually designed for the laser cutting use case. And that's sort of where Cuttle came from. And Ryan, you have some things prepared?
Yeah, so I guess we can go back in time again to where I kind of came from. So I guess I originally was sort of interested in animation as like as a kid, and that's kind of like the industry that I went into in my earlier days. And this is basically my motion graphics reel from like when I worked in that industry down in LA. So like as part of making images and animations like this, I kind of got interested in programming. So like a lot of this is some of this is fully manual animation, and some of it's like is programmatic. So I was mainly using programming to kind of create images. So like I kind of came at the whole thing from just like wanting to make things that look cool. And over time I kind of like basically got more interested in making tools than making sort of like the images themselves. So like actually like even in this, like back in these days, like I ended up making, so like for this project, like I ended up making like a tool that like that the art director could use to kind of like to like get the specific effect that they wanted. And so like I think basically like tool making is kind of wrapped up in all of this this stuff. Like sometimes the tools were just like one off for one project, and like sometimes they were sort of like things that you would use again and again, but like but yeah, it was something that I really enjoyed doing. And a lot of this was done in processing in which is like a project by like originally by Ben Fry and Casey Reese, and that was basically kind of like a really simple way to get into graphical programming. So like drawing like a line is as simple as like writing the command line with like four numbers for the coordinates.
Yeah, a lot of people got started, I think, in that community.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, at least a lot of the artists that are doing stuff like this that I've met.
Yeah, it was just like a really kind of like, so I tried to sort of do things before that just in pure Java was like what I was trying to use. For some reason that was like the one that I ended up getting into, and it was just so much work to kind of get to draw something even really basic, that like when processing came out, it was just like, oh my gosh, I can just like draw a circle and draw a line and like draw an image, and I can transform things.
So did you use Flash ever, or was that before or after processing?
So yeah, I did use Flash, but I never used it. I only used it for building websites and building like animated websites. So I did do a good amount of programming in that, but that was like in the days where I was still just like I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was just sort of like, moving things like, I think back in those days, like Flash wasn't even really like, you didn't have like, now it's just defunct, but like at one point it was like an actual programming environment, and
right.
We had like, and they had like a variation of JavaScript that it was using and stuff like that. But like when I started using it, it was just like, I don't even like the programming aspect wasn't
I kind of liked that version, the one right before they introduced programming.
Yeah, like I don't know how I was able to do like the
Because
complicated
you
stuff.
had you could make videos, but and like the only programming you could do was like to play and pause other videos. So you could have all these videos, and they could respond to clicks and play and pause other videos, or take you to another frame of the animation.
Yeah,
and
I guess
that was actually
like,
pretty powerful. Like you could get all sorts of interesting interactions with that.
yeah, sort of more like hypercardy like at that time. Yeah, and then yeah, director, macromedia director. I was big into that when I was like
I
a
never used
teenager.
that one. Uh-huh.
But yeah, anyway, so like we can go to the next slide. Oh, I have the mouse. I have the power. Yeah, so like yeah, like one so I basically got out of that like industry, moved up to the Bay Area, and kind of like got more interested in art stuff that wasn't commercial art, I guess. And these are just like sort of a few of the projects that I worked on over the years, like. So, you know, some of it was like writing software to like take a mesh and like turn it into a bunch of like laser cuttable triangles and the connectors that connect them. That was like an installation that was up at Gray Area in San Francisco. Let's see, some of this other stuff like like the koi fish is basically like just a completely manual sort of remake of a or reverse engineering of another project that I did mainly in Rhino. The desk was like a sort of a piece that I made for a friend who was doing a music performance, and he wanted to have this sort of like specialized folding table that he could like take around.
That's nice. I like that.
And so that thing, it basically it flat packs and then just it like basically bolts together, and then the top of it is like has a big piano hinge that like just folds. So it's made for kind of like taking on the road. And then the other image is just some experimentation with like 3D printing, some like generative forms. So
it's pretty nice. It fits into the landscape nicely.
Yeah, so that's me kind of like getting interested in like in digital fabrication, because like just, you know, like in order to make a lot of this art, like you just need to learn a lot of these tools. So like, you know, laser cutting and 2.5D milling, 3D printing. That's like basically what was used to make all these projects. So next slide. So then basically kind of like simultaneously with this, I was working at this it's kind of like a half research lab, half incubator called Other Lab. And they're based in also based in San Francisco in the Mission. And they had a lot of different projects going on. Like the team that I was doing, that I was working on, was mainly doing like sort of computational geometry work. So kind of like taking meshes and like making them making it so you can fabricate them like in the real world on like a laser cutter or a milling machine or something.
Was that the stuff that became those Autodesk products?
Yeah, so if you've ever used like 123D, the like Autodesk 123D stuff, that's kind of like was came out of Other Lab.
I see.
So they had some tools for basically like taking a 3D model and turning it into like a bunch into flat cut sheets. Like if you want to sort of like, like in various different ways.
Yeah, you take the 3D model of the dinosaur, and then it's like a bunch of pieces that all like
you can slice it
together,
or you can take the triangles that are outside, and you can make like you can decompose it into something that can be stitched together, or like if it's made out of metal, then you can say like, oh, it can bend, and you can use like sort of like you have some sort of connector, like maybe tabs or stitching holes, then it basically does the rest for you.
And what's this
So
showing?
this project is another one that I worked on called Cube Team, and it was basically like kind of like supposed to be like a whimsical way to get to kind of like for like younger people to like get interested in 3D modeling and fabrication. So like basically it's kind of modeled after Minecraft, as you can see. So like everything is cubes. You can go in the difference between this and something like Minecraft is that you can obviously like you can go in and paint with like a paintbrush and sort of like you can add and subtract material and smooth, and you can use different shapes like spheres and cubes and stuff like that to kind of build up 3D models. And then that basically like goes directly can be like exported as like a mesh for to be printed on like a 3D printer. So that at that time we were using like a MakerBot, just like a low cost like FDM printer.
I like the castle.
Yeah, I still have that one. Yeah, so like that's kind of in the theme of like building tools for fabrication. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So like after Other Lab, I kind of sort of took a detour and did a collaboration with a friend of mine. We built this sort of sequencer application. So this is like a music sequencer called Sequence, SEA Quence. And this is like a iPhone and iPad application that basically is like a self-contained little musical petri dish where you can.
And this is still on the App Store, right?
Oh yeah, it's still in the App Store. We update it occasionally.
It's super fun, and like people who are really good at it can like just play, like they can play like a whole set, like an hour-long set of like really interesting music. I feel like it's like a really nice tool that has a lot of depth, I think. I mean, I've only played with it and it's fun, but like I feel like the depth is there for like a musician to really go at it.
Yeah, it's meant to be sort of like more of a musical toy, but you can kind of like this video is actually an example of using it with other tools. You can so it can send MIDI to other applications. So like even if you get kind of like you run out of like possibilities in like the Sequence Sonic palette, you can go to like another I think in this one I'm using like a synth module and like a sort of drum kit module to add different sounds that like Sequence isn't very good at. But yeah, it's mainly sort of like a thing to make these little loops that are maybe up to like 30 seconds or something like that.
But then each one of those is one of these creatures that's like swimming around, and then like you make a bunch of them, and then they like by the proximity of them to each other changes like the musical soundscape, right? Is that
so they basically like kind of depending on which ones you're looking at, like the ones that you see on the screen will be the ones that are like the loudest and the ones you can hear. So you can make different compositions and then kind of pan around between them, and then there's like a whole sharing, like online sharing aspect where you can like download and remix other people's compositions, stuff like that. So
if you're at all interested in music toys, I do recommend checking this out. Sequence, SEA Quence, if you have a iOS device.
So we can move to the next slide. So
Are you on? Is that the next slide or
no? There should be another.
There we go.
So yeah, this is another project that we worked on, that I worked on with the same collaborator, Gabriel Dunn, and this is actually Vishal Dar, who's another friend and like a really amazing artist, based in New Delhi. And so he came out and we did this sort of this augmented reality installation in the Marin Headlands. So this is just a video of basically what it looked like on site, like through your phone. So you would go up and basically like sort of scan the environment, and then you would see through through your phone or through your iPad or something. You would see these sort of ethereal forms, and yeah, that's not really much to say about this, but it's just another project that we collaborated on.
Is there a meaning?
I think it's sort of very, I think it's sort of up to the viewer.
Okay.
I think Vishal has some ideas about it, and but I think he wants to also leave it pretty. I don't think he wants to put an explicit meaning to it.
This is also a very beautiful place. If you're ever in the Bay Area, the Marin Headlands, Rodeo Beach is another name for this area, I think.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of
recommended.
old sort of gun batteries there, and the guns are not there anymore, but like the sites are, and
Right, it's
they're
like
kind of
it's where they were setting up in case the Japanese invaded during World War II, right?
Yeah, I think it's like there have been various like sort of phases of like of like some of the batteries are older and some of them are newer, and it was always like sort of a new threat that I think never actually materialized.
But there are all this infrastructure there from those days.
So they have this kind of
in this beautiful ocean, hilly.
Yeah, it's a very dramatic environment.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So it's actually still running. Like the last time I checked, it still worked. So if you go to the Marin Headlands, you can
app before you get there.
Yeah,
you're not gonna have good signal there probably.
Yeah, so download the Twilight Engines app. It's still in the App Store. You can see some of this stuff. Yeah, and then I guess like the last thing I'll talk about is like a project that I worked on with Toby and Moki, and this is kind of like our sort of we had done some art before, but this is like the project that kind of I think was maybe not like the catalyst for Cuttle, but it was sort of like the one of the like certainly my like sort of introduction to it. So we used a prototype that Toby had made to build that's just that's talking about previous work. So we used a prototype to build these sculptures, and it was really like even back then it was like pretty compelling, like, and the workflow, and I had been really sort of tired of like the sort of workflow in apps where you kind of have to go back and redo work a lot to kind of like to get things really right, and especially with the complicated shapes like this, and things that are have symmetries that you want to preserve. Can we show the chat just to make sure nobody's so like that kind of thing really lends itself to Cuttle's strengths,
this was we had made sculptures like this using tools before Cuttle, like Illustrator, Affinity Designer, and such. And then I had an artist residency where I made sort of the first prototype of Cuttle, informed by doing this project together with Moki and Ryan. And then we used that prototype of Cuttle to make these sort of more finished, refined versions, which we ended up selling kits on Indiegogo, and that was fun to get these into people's hands. There's a video of how to make this material on our YouTube channel that Moki recorded. If you're interested in like making things with this really cool, it's called dichroic, like the rainbow sort of color changing depending on the angle of the light. But yeah, I mean, this is where Cuttle came together, and like I think like those tendrils Were those made in Cuttle, or were
Those were made in Paper.js,
Paper.js,
and then
and then you
exported.
brought
So I exported so I generated the you're talking about like the little branches. So I generated them and then brought the SVG into Cuttle prototype and then just sort of like I think back then it was even useful because I could put that directly into a path and then just have anchors around that. So I would have like anchor, and then this whole branch, and then like anchor, and like everything connects, and you can do the rotational repeat, and you don't need to do any weird fixing up of like, oh, like how do I get these two things to connect, like booleaning or whatever.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what's driving Cuttle's development, or at least in those early days, was like we had some artistic vision. We cobbled together other tools in order to get there, but then that process then informed, well, what would we want in our ideal tool for like really exploring these artistic ideas that we had?
Yeah, so actually since then I've ported that whole branching sort of project to Cuttle, but it's sort of not really something I've actually used yet. It's just wanted to see if I could do it.
So if anyone, I would say, I mean, so that's the story of how we got to Cuttle, and I guess we wanted to open it up to Q&A if anyone has any questions about Cuttle or anything else. We'd be happy to take a few questions for the next 10 minutes.
Long-winded sort of, I don't actually even know. We're so noobish at this. I don't even know where to see like how many people are still watching the stream. But
we have a chat window. Yeah, if anyone's still there, you can say something. Otherwise, maybe my internet cut out and we just didn't know this whole time. Brian Wente says, an amazing journey.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Indeed. Yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah. We're still journeying.
This is actually this journey is actually a lot longer than I anticipated. when we started, like, especially as a company, I would say, like, I feel like the tool is like sort of where I was hoping it would be, at this time, but like, as like, this is, both of us, I would say, have worked a lot in like either artistic projects or in like sort of research contexts. Like Other Lab is like a research lab, a dynamic land where I did those like projection things. It's like a research context where like the output is sort of like an idea that you prove is interesting by making a prototype and maybe doing a presentation or writing an academic paper or something.
You're not starting from like you're not starting from like a product market fit sort of perspective of there's this deficiency in the market. I need to fill that. It's more just like, oh, I want this tool, and this seems like a cool way to make things. That's kind of where we.
So it's been interesting to like in this new context where it's like we want Cuttle to be both a business but also like just like a more ubiquitous tool than a lot of these things that we've these prototypes that we've made in the past. Like we actually want to get this into people's hands, but also transform their abilities with the tools. So and it's been interesting to evolve based on what people are either asking about or like seeing what they're doing, where they're running into trouble, like how can we make it better, how can we explain what Cuttle is a really hard question, like so that people know what it can be useful for. So I would say that part of the journey is we're just at the beginning of that. And I was when we started this like 2 years ago or however long, whenever COVID started, like I think I didn't realize like that we would only be at the beginning of sort of that part of it. So that's been interesting. But I also like how far we've gotten so far.
Yeah, I guess if I've learned anything about this, about I guess just projects in general, but like these types of big projects, is like that everything takes longer than you think it will take, even if you know that everything takes longer than you think it will take.
Hofstadter's law. Everything takes longer than you expect, even if you take into account Hofstadter's law.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm gonna.
Well,
I think I might close it up. Maybe what we can do is like maybe we can collect questions beforehand, and then for next week we can do question and answer as a potential format. So yeah, maybe since I don't see anything. Anything else after Cuttle on the works? Do you have anything after Cuttle on the works? I've been so just like heads down in Cuttle land.
I haven't even been allowing myself to think about after Cuttle. Does that even exist? I guess we'll see. I mean, there's plenty of things that I'm personally interested in, but I think Cuttle definitely isn't finished yet.
Yeah, Cuttle is so far from finished. I mean, like, it would be cool for me. I would love to get back to my art practice. Like, we started Cuttle like thinking that, like we can like sort of meld together our work and our art, and I would say the work has sort of taken over, and like my art practice isn't.
That is the goal that we had, was kind of like to be making projects with Cuttle as we're working on it, and kind of like letting that inform it. But sort of like Cuttle, the sort of business has kind of, the existential sort of worries about Cuttle continuing to exist has kind of overruled that.
Well,
more.
it's just like there's constantly, it's like we're trying to get schools set up now, and that's been great, but there's like a lot of moving parts and like data privacy agreements and whatnot for schools, and takes up a lot of time, and there's the editor like has to work on all the browsers, and that takes a lot of time, and so it makes sense that it's taking time. But yeah, I think like if anything, the thing after Cuttle would be like me getting back into our art practices, I think, using Cuttle. All right. I'm going to close up because we're almost at an hour.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you a week from today at the same time.
All right.
Bye.